Thank you, Vanessa. Let's come on to Gaza then. And well, The Lancet has been publishing some information on death statistics.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much focused on Gaza today in all my reports because the IOF brutality and savagery has increased exponentially across the enclave, and areas are being re-invaded, re-bombarded since people have actually returned to already bombarded areas considered to be safe after the withdrawal of the Israeli forces. So this came out, it was published on the 5th. Counting the dead in Gaza is difficult but essential. So let's have a look at what it actually says. It's a relatively short report. So it talks about the armed conflicts that have indirect health implications beyond the direct harm from violence. Even if the conflict ends immediately, there will continue to be many indirect deaths in the coming months and years from causes such as reproductive, communicable, and non-communicable diseases. The total death toll is expected to be large given the intensity of the conflict, destroyed healthcare infrastructure, severe shortages of, it's not exactly just severe shortages, they are being deliberately starved. The shortage of water and shelter. Shelter has, of course, been destroyed. Also, water plants have been destroyed. Processing plants have been destroyed. The population's inability to flee to safe places, and the loss of funding to UNRWA, one of the very few humanitarian organizations still active in the Gaza Strip. And of course, we know it isn't still active because Israel has prevented any activity by UNRWA inside Gaza. It goes on to say in recent conflicts, such indirect deaths range from 3 to 15 times the number of direct deaths, applying a conservative estimate of 4 indirect deaths per 1 direct death to the 37 or let's say 38,000 deaths reported. It's not implausible to estimate that up to 186,000 or even more deaths could be attributable to the current conflict in Gaza, and bearing in mind at least 50% of that number will probably be children. Using the 2022 Gaza Strip population estimate of 2.3 million, this would translate to 7.9 of the total population in the Gaza Strip. And a report from February the 7th, 2024, at the time when the direct death toll was 28,000, estimated that without a ceasefire, there would be between 58.2 thousand deaths without an epidemic or escalation, and 85,750 deaths if both occurred by August the 6th, 2024. Horrifying numbers. And actually, funnily enough, there have been a spate of videos from British Palestinian doctors in particular who've managed to enter Gaza and who are working in the decimated hospital systems there. And this is one doctor, Dr. Ahmed, who's working at the Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah, which is another area that was relatively safe for about a week or so and is now under heavy artillery fire. So let's just have a look at whether his testimony bears out what the Lancet has said.
This is especially poignant and hard to speak about, given what happened yesterday. There was a bombing of one of the schools, and we had child after child after child get brought into the resuscitation room with different extents of traumatic injury. Standing over one child intubated with a depressed skull fracture, another with a shrapnel injury, probably 10 years old, so severe that we could see an exposed kidney and likely a transected spinal cord, trying to rush them to the OR to salvage what we could. And then in the backdrop, as a pediatrician, I see small children sitting in the corner with lesser physical traumatic injuries, but no doubt witnessing death and destruction and dying in a way that their little brains and could never be capable of coping with. And so the bleeding has to stop, the bombs have to stop, and access to all types of humanitarian have to be allowed. If there's any doubt from anybody whether or not humanitarian aid has been allowed, I can promise you the answer is no. The number is underestimated. And the reason I say this is, as a medical professional, this ICU where I work today is full of DKA patients, diabetic patients, who get a very treatable disease, but they're dying of the most simple thing because the insulin is unavailable, because they're not allowed to bring it in, and refrigeration is gone. There are people dying of chronic, as many amputees as they are from the trauma. There's amputees of diabetes uncontrolled. And these people will be permanently disabled after this war. The numbers are vastly high. I would say 4, 5, 6 times higher easily.
Sorry, I think he was actually from the US, and he mentioned that he brought around 6 suitcases full of medicines that had been donated. All of them were seized by the Israeli authorities. Then I just wanted to point out that in the last 24 hours, Israel has bombarded children's football match in the Al-Auda school in central Gaza in Khan Yunis. So let's just have a look at the video. There are distressing scenes in this video. Wow. 30 people at least killed in that attack and dozens more injured. No terrorists, just kids trying to unwind and play football. And I just wanted to point out, you mentioned the demonization of Russia in Ukraine, and we have a perfect example when it comes to actually holding Israel to account for the crimes it is obviously committing. This is Keir Starmer's response, and on the other side is his immediate demonization of Russia over the alleged bombing in Ukraine. So let's just roll this.
I don't think is wise, and this is, we're always being asked to do this, is for politicians to sit looking at clips on social media or on programmes and forming instant judgments about whether it's a breach of this law or that. That doesn't seem to be wise. But
when it comes to Russia, it's perfectly acceptable. Extraordinary hypocrisy.
Indeed. Indeed. Don't really know what to say about that. Okay. Thank you, Vanessa. Okay. If you like what the UK column does, you would like to support us, the place to go is support.ukcolumn.org. Options to help us out there. We do need your support. So if you can help, please do. But whether or not you choose to do that, please do share material. We are being censored on the various platforms, the Facebook being the latest of them. And so we need your help to get the reach that the algorithms will not provide. So if you can help us with that, that would be great too. And please do pick something up at the UK column shop if you would like to, not least Your Life in Their Hands, which many people in the chat box have noticed is sitting on the shelf behind Charles there. So thank you very much for that, Charles. But Charles, tomorrow at 1 p.m, you are interviewing Laura Damaret. Is that how you pronounce her name?
Well, I was unsure as well, but no, it's Demaret. Laura Demaret is a registered nurse in Idaho. She is absolutely a ball of energy and now wisdom. She's been effectively applying the principles that are set out in the doctrine of the lesser magistrates and using interposition, the practice of interposition. And she's been approaching county boards and effectively getting legislation put in place or policies changed according to stopping mRNA COVID vaccines from harming people. And this is because of what she saw working in the care sector very early on in 2020. And she was absolutely appalled. And so she's gone out and done something on her own. Obviously as part of a large network, but she's got off her backside and done it. And it's a very, very impressive story of how to take on the authorities and succeed. So I really would encourage people to tune in and find out how to get amongst it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charles. And another reminder of a date for your diary, which is Saturday, the 19th of October. The place is Bristol, and we will be really live that day. And so we do encourage, as soon as we make the details available of it for it, which will be very, very soon now, we encourage you to come along and join us for that. Thank you. Now, let's go back to Gaza then, Vanessa. And the question is, what happens when the Israeli military gets bored?
Yeah, this is a new article again in Plus 972 Mag, which is an Israeli media outlet. The headline, "I'm bored, so I shoot. The Israeli army's approval of free-for-all violence in Gaza. Israeli soldiers describe the near total absence of firing regulations in the Gaza war, with troops shooting as they please, setting homes ablaze and leaving corpses on the streets." So let's see what it says. And it's a very long article. I do recommend people find it. It's not behind a paywall, and it will be in the show notes. 6 sources gave testimony to 972, recounted how Israeli soldiers routinely executed Palestinian civilians simply because they entered an area that the military defined as a kill zone, effectively. The testimonies paint a picture of a landscape littered with civilian corpses, which are left to rot or be eaten by stray animals. The army only hides them from view ahead of the arrival of international aid convoys. 2 of the soldiers also testified to a systematic policy of setting Palestinian homes on fire after occupying them. And if you go to TikTok, you can find multiple videos testifying to this. And here is just one very quick example that was put on Telegram yesterday. So if we just show this one. I mean, basically, this is entertainment, and that includes also the detonating of entire areas, including schools and mosques and hospitals and so on. So continuing with the article, there was total freedom of action, said B, another soldier who served in the regular forces in Gaza for months, including in his battalion's command center. If there is even a feeling of threat, there is no need to explain, you just shoot. When soldiers see someone approaching, it is permissible to shoot at their center of mass, their body, not into the air. He continued, it's permissible to shoot everyone, a young girl or an old woman. And continuing again, A explained that shooting at hospitals, clinics, schools, religious institutions and buildings of international organizations required higher authorization. But in practice, I can count on one hand the cases where we were told not to shoot. Even with sensitive things like schools, approval feels like only a formality. In general, A continued, the spirit in the operations room was shoot first and ask questions later. That was the consensus. No one will shed a tear if we flatten a house when there was no need, or if we shoot someone, we didn't have to. I mean, this is just extraordinary. And then they go on to talk about the fact that before humanitarian convoys arrived, so this is foreign humanitarian convoys, S noted that the bodies are removed. A D9 Caterpillar bulldozer goes down with a tank and clears the area of corpses, buries them under the rubble and flips them aside so that the convoys don't see it. So that images of people in advanced stages of decay don't come out, he described. I saw a lot of Palestinian civilians, families, women, children, S continued. There are more fatalities than are reported. We are in a small area. Every day, at least 1 or 2 civilians are killed because they walked into a no-go area or a kill zone. I don't know who is a terrorist and who is not, but most of them did not carry weapons. And yesterday, basically what is a snuff video was released by Channel 14 in Israel, showing the kind of Unit 8200 types carrying out a drone strike on 2 children, easily under the age of 12, I would say, just looking at the video. One was injured trying to make it to safety. The other is clearly dead in the red T-shirt. And let's just roll this.
אנחנו מצטרפים ליחידת הרחפנים ועדים לדרמה שמתרחשת בלב סג'עיה.
קיבלתי 2 לוחמים על צומת אלטול עוברות.
זה אחד החמ"לים המרכזיים בסג'עיה. החבר'ה פה בעצם אנשים שמסתכלים מלמעלה על כל מה שקורה כאן במרחב. יש פה בדקות האחרונות נגיעה אינדיקציה שיש כנראה איזושהי חוליה שמסתתרת פה באחד המבנים ההרוסים. גם אם הוא קם, גם אם הוא זז, גם אם הוא יגיע לאיזשהו מבנה, יהיה עליו מעקב רציף. עד שבסופו של דבר יסגרו עליו מעגל ויחסלו גם אותו.
תתעלה לפתח.
I mean, this is just summary execution of anything that moves, basically, in Gaza. It's just hideous.
Okay, well, indeed. Let's move on. Then, Vanessa, let's come back to you. And the question of prisoners that are in Israel, Palestinian prisoners.
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind, we only ever hear about I think it's around 120 now hostages inside Gaza. We never hear about the 9,600 Palestinian hostages held in administrative detention or in military jails in the occupied territories. So that's without the potential. I think I've seen numbers around 9,000 also arrested from inside Gaza, and many of those are still in arbitrary detention. This is a recent report by Euromed, a human rights organization, killing, torture, and injections of unknown substances. The international community must act on Israeli violations of Gaza detainees, and of course that includes sexual abuse, rape, torture by electrical methods, and so on. And this just absolutely shocked me when this sort of came across the media in the last 2 days. Moazaz Obayat from Bethlehem in the occupied territories was arrested 9 months ago and just released. And there you see him on the left as a boxer. He was a sportsman and a boxer. And the other photo is his release. And basically, the Palestinian Prisoners Club put out a short statement. The occupation released the prisoner Moazaz after 9 months of detention, where he was subjected to a systematic assassination attempt. They did try to kill him during his time in Offa prison. He faced systematic and brutal assaults that included the breaking of all his limbs, visible in the circulating videos, and he was left without treatment until his liberation. So I put together a little compilation of the videos that have been circulating in the last 24 hours. And really, every day we see things that shock us and horrify us in Gaza, but this really got to me. So if we can just play this.
في 4/12 تعرضت لعملية قتل في سجن عوفة. رقص عديد بن غفير وأعلن عن قتلي في 4/12. صحيت في مستشفى الرملة. ما قدموا لنا أي علاج. وضع سيء جدا جدا. احنا بنموت كل يوم. احنا السجن 2000 واحد بنموت. سجن النقب سجن غوانتنامو. كل شيء لا يتصوره العقل. قتل، ضرب، جوع، فقر، مرض، 2000 أسير، أمراض مزمنة، أمراض قوية جدا، وضعهم سيء جدا.
And I just wanted people to remember the videos, the multiple videos and photos of released hostages from Gaza, and to note the difference. Here, I think, was one of the first hostage releases. You can see basically the resistance forces. You can see that the hostages are in good health, that they have good relationships with their captors who kept them safe under Zionist bombardment. All of them were given food, water, even though Palestinians were starving and without water. It's so obvious, the difference. And I really want to recommend people watch this interview that Mike and I did a few days ago with Professor David Miller, who goes into enormous depth. I mean, absolutely blew my mind over certain aspects of the Zionist movement in Britain and the extent to which they have infiltrated all sectors of British society and are influencing many of the movements that are manipulating public opinion in the UK. Please do watch it on the basis of the reports that I've also just made about the brutality and the savagery of what is a genocidal ethno-supremacist movement.
Yes, Vanessa, thank you very much for that.